The forge hung in space like a graveyard. It was a region of dead stars and shattered planets where the Council tested new weapons away from populated systems. The area was scattered with debris from 1,000 previous tests, creating a maze of wreckage that floated endlessly in the void. 3 Vrex dreadnoughts took up position in a triangle formation, their hulls painted in the dark red of the Dominion fleet. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons and carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. Their crews were experienced warriors who had seen real combat. This would not be like fighting pirates or rebels. On the observation platform, safely distant from the testing ground, the Galactic Council had gathered. Holographic displays showed multiple angles of the battlefield. Sensor readings scrolled across screens measuring every energy fluctuation. Ambassador Krell stood with his arms crossed, confident and pleased. "The Defiance is alone," he noted. "One human ship against 3 of our finest. They're either very brave or very foolish." Elder Mira watched the screens with her small hands clasped together. She wanted to hope but was afraid to. Loomis floated nearby, his energy form pulsing with nervous anticipation. "Captain Hayes agreed to let your ships fire first." "That seems unwise." "It's arrogance," Krell replied. "They think their shields can withstand our weapons. They'll learn differently." The Defiance entered the testing zone exactly on schedule. It moved with smooth precision, taking a position in the center of the triangle formed by the Vrex ships. The human vessel made no aggressive moves. It simply waited. Captain Hayes' voice came over the open channel. "We're in position. Ambassador Krell, your forces may begin whenever you're ready. We'll remain stationary for the first exchange." Krell's smile widened. "How generous." "Commander Vex, you may fire at will." Full broadsides. On the lead dreadnought, Commander Vex was a veteran of 20 campaigns. He'd never lost a battle. He studied the human ship carefully, noting its weapons ports and engine configuration. It was certainly large, but size meant nothing without proper defenses. "All batteries," Vex ordered. "Target the center mass, fire." The 3 dreadnoughts opened up simultaneously. Plasma cannons roared. Energy beams lanced through space. Missile tubes launched their payloads in waves. It was enough firepower to destroy a space station. The combined attack converged on the Defiance from 3 angles at once. The human ship disappeared in a sphere of explosions and energy. On the observation platform, several delegates cheered. Krell's smile became triumphant. So much for human superiority. But Elder Mira leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the displays. The sensor readings were strange. The energy was dissipating too quickly. The explosions cleared, and the Defiance hung in space exactly where it had been. Not a mark on its hull. Its shields shimmered faintly with a bluish glow, and as the Council watched, that glow faded away completely. The chamber fell silent. "Impossible," Commander Vex whispered on his bridge. "Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Nothing." Captain Hayes' voice came through clearly, still perfectly calm. "Thank you for the demonstration, Ambassador. That was impressive firepower. Now, would you like to see what human weapons can do?" Krell's confidence faltered for the first time. Your shields held. But can they withstand a sustained assault?" "Commander Vex, continue firing." "With respect, Ambassador," Hayes replied. "We agreed to 1 exchange each. It's our turn now." On the Defiance's bridge, Commander Lisa Grant stood at her station with her hand hovering over the weapons controls. "Captain, targeting solution locked. Weapons ready." "Thank you, Commander," Hayes said. "Let's keep this simple. Lieutenant Kyle Morris, tactical. Fire 1 beam at 5% power. Target the lead ship's center mass, 5%. The words echoed through the observation platform. They were using 5% power. On the Defiance, a single weapon port glowed with pale blue light. There was no dramatic charge-up. No warning. The beam simply appeared, connecting the human ship to the lead Vrex dreadnought. The beam didn't hit the Vrex shields. It passed through them as if they weren't there. The energy field that should have deflected or absorbed the attack might as well have been empty air. The beam struck the dreadnought's hull directly. Metal parted like paper. The beam cut through armor, through bulkheads, through the entire ship from bow to stern. It was surgical, precise, and utterly unstoppable. The dreadnought split in half, its 2 pieces drifting apart as emergency systems screamed and crew members scrambled for escape pods. Commander Vex stared at his screens in disbelief. Half his ship was gone, just gone, cut away by a single shot that his shields hadn't even slowed down. All ships evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Return fire. Everything we have. The two remaining dreadnoughts broke formation and opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Missiles streaked through space. Fighter craft launched from hangar bays. Plasma torpedoes created webs of destructive energy. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Morris worked his console with practiced efficiency. Point defense active. Engaging countermeasures. The missiles never reached their target. Small turrets along the Defiance's hull tracked and destroyed them with casual precision. The plasma torpedoes encountered some kind of field that dispersed their energy harmlessly. And the fighter craft suddenly found their systems behaving strangely. Fighter pilots shouted in confusion as their controls stopped responding properly. Targeting systems locked up. Communications went silent. Engine controls became sluggish. Within seconds, the entire fighter wing was spiraling out of control, unable to attack or retreat effectively. What's happening? A pilot screamed into his dead communicator. Dr. Cole's voice came over the open channel, speaking with the tone of a teacher explaining a simple concept. We've taken temporary control of your fighter systems. Don't worry, we'll give them back when this is over. We just can't let you hurt yourselves. The second dreadnought's reactor suddenly began showing critical warnings. Engineer crews raced to stabilize it, but the systems were failing in ways that made no sense. Someone or something was accessing their computers directly. Reactor breach imminent. The ship's AI announced calmly. All hands evacuate. Commander Vex couldn't believe it. How? How are they doing this? The third dreadnought tried to run. Its captain ordered an emergency jump to hyperspace. The jump drive charged. The ship began to shimmer with the telltale signs of a spatial fold, and then nothing happened. The drive shut down completely. Jump drive offline, the navigator reported. Something hit us with a targeting pulse. The system's been disabled. Hayes spoke again, his voice still patient and calm. We're going to stop now. We've made our point. Commander Vex, please evacuate your damaged vessels. We'll provide medical assistance and transport for your crews back to Council space. No one needs to die today. On the observation platform, the Council chamber was utterly silent. What they'd just witnessed defied everything they knew about warfare and technology. The humans hadn't just won. They'd won effortlessly, using a fraction of their capabilities. Ambassador Krell's scales had gone pale. His earlier confidence was completely gone. Elder Mira's eyes were wide with wonder and something like vindication. Dr. Cole appeared on the main view screen, looking almost apologetic. For those interested in the technical details, our weapons operate on principles that your current physics models don't account for. We've discovered ways to bypass conventional shielding by operating in overlapping dimensional frequencies. It's quite fascinating, really. He pulled up holographic diagrams that appeared on every observation screen, complex mathematical formulas and theoretical models that made the Council's top scientists lean forward with intense interest. We'd be happy to share this knowledge, Cole continued, along with our advances in quantum computing, medicine, agricultural technology, and about 40 other fields. That's what we're offering: partnership, cooperation, a chance to grow together. Commander Grant appeared beside Cole on the screen. But understand this clearly. We've been patient for 30 years. We've followed your rules and stayed in our corner. That time is over. We're here now and we're not leaving. The question isn't whether humanity joins the galactic community. The question is whether we do it as friends or as strangers. Captain Hayes appeared in the center of the screen. Ambassador Krell, your crews are safe. We're tractoring the damaged sections of your lead ship to prevent casualties. No one else needs to get hurt. We've proven we could destroy your fleet easily. We chose not to. That tells you something about humanity's intentions. Commander Vex, evacuating his bisected ship, found himself assisted by small human drones that appeared from nowhere. They guided escape pods to safe locations and provided medical supplies to injured crew members. His warriors were alive because the humans had chosen mercy. On the observation platform, delegates began talking urgently among themselves. What they'd witnessed changed everything. Humanity wasn't just asking to join the Council. They were demonstrating that they could protect themselves and, more importantly, they could protect others. Elder Mira turned to Ambassador Krell, her gentle voice carrying an edge of steel. They defended themselves 30 years ago. They've defended themselves today. Perhaps it's time we listened to what they have to say. The Council chamber was in chaos. Delegates argued in dozens of languages. Security teams scrambled to make sense of what they'd witnessed. Scientists demanded access to the censored data from the test. Everyone had questions, but no one had answers. Ambassador Krell sat in his section, silent and shaken. His 3 finest dreadnoughts had been neutralized in minutes. 1 cut in half. 1 forced to evacuate. 1 left dead in space. And the humans had done it at 5% power while offering medical assistance to the survivors. Loomis struggled to restore order, his energy form pulsing bright with agitation. Please, honored delegates, we must discuss this rationally. Captain Hayes, you've made your point quite dramatically. What exactly do you want from this council? The view screen activated again. Captain Hayes appeared, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him on the bridge of the Defiance, Dr. Cole was working at a science station. Commander Grant stood ready at tactical, and several other crew members were visible at their posts. What we want is simple, Hayes began. Full membership in the Galactic Council, trading rights, freedom of movement, the same opportunities every other species enjoys. We're not asking for special privileges, just equality. You speak of equality, said a delegate from the Torvin Collective, a crystalline species that communicated through light pulses. Yet you arrive with overwhelming military force. How are we to trust your intentions? Hayes nodded as if he'd expected the question. A fair point. Dr. Cole, would you like to address that? Cole adjusted his glasses and moved to the center of the view screen. Certainly. Members of the Council, I'd like to explain exactly how humanity spent the last 30 years. Yes, we developed military technology. We'd be fools not to after what happened at first contact, but that was only one part of our progress. He pulled up new displays, and the holographic images that appeared throughout the council chamber made several delegates gasp. These weren't weapons. They were discoveries. We cracked quantum communication, Cole explained, showing diagrams of relay networks. Instantaneous contact across any distance. No lag, no delay. We'd be happy to share that technology. The image changed to show medical equipment. We've developed treatments for cellular degradation that could extend lifespans by 30 to 40% for most species. We've tested it on Earth biology, but the principles should apply universally. Another image appeared, this time showing agricultural technology, advanced hydroponics and genetic mapping that could end food scarcity on most worlds within a decade. Cole continued, showing advance after advance. Power generation systems, terraforming techniques, educational software that adapted to individual learning styles. The list went on. We had 30 years to focus, Cole said quietly. 30 years without the distractions of politics or territorial disputes. We used that time to advance in every field we could, and now we want to share it. Elder Mira stood slowly, her small form trembling with emotion. Why share all of this? You could keep it for yourselves. Use it as leverage. Captain Hayes answered that question himself. Because that's not who we are. Yes, we can be fierce when protecting our people. The Rex learned that 30 years ago, and they learned it again today. But we're also builders, explorers, teachers. We want to be part of something bigger than just humanity. Pretty words, a suspicious delegate muttered. Commander Grant stepped forward, and her expression was harder than Hayes's diplomatic calm. Let me be direct. We could have destroyed those monitoring stations 30 years ago. We didn't. We could have started picking off isolated ships and installations. We didn't. We could have shown up here with weapons ready and demanded submission. We didn't. Instead, we watched and learned and built. We gave you every chance to be worthy of our respect. The blunt honesty silenced many critics. But, Grant continued, we won't be prisoners anymore. We won't stay quiet while aggressive species like the Vrex push others around. We won't watch the council debate endlessly while good people suffer. If you want our technology and cooperation, then things need to change. Ambassador Krell found his voice again, though it was weaker than before. You speak of our aggression. What of yours? You destroyed Vrex ships at first contact. Hayes's expression went cold. Dr. Cole, please play File 7 for the council. The holographic displays changed again. This time they showed raw sensor data from the first contact incident, pulled from human records. The timestamps were clear and impossible to fake. A peaceful human colony world. Families going about their daily lives. Children playing. People working in fields and factories. Then Vrex ships arriving in orbit. The colony sending out greeting messages in every language they knew. The Virex response was weapons fire, plasma bombardment from orbit, explosions tearing through population centers, people running and screaming, buildings collapsing, and through it all, the colony kept trying to communicate, kept trying to ask why. Only after hundreds were dead did human defense ships arrive. Only then did the shooting truly begin. And yes, the human response was brutal and efficient, but it came after the Virex had fired on civilians. The council chamber was silent as the recording ended. 347 people died before our ships arrived, Hayes said quietly. Most of them were civilians, families. We buried children, Ambassador Krell. And your government told the council we attacked first. Krell had no response. The evidence was irrefutable. Elder Mira spoke, her voice breaking with emotion. This is what happened to us. The Virex came to the Terminus Belt claiming they wanted to trade. Then they demanded we leave. When we refused, they began destroying our settlements. Not all at once. Just one at a time until we had no choice but to evacuate. And the council did nothing. Other delegates began speaking up. Stories of Virex aggression, territorial disputes that went unresolved because the council feared confrontation. Smaller species being pushed around while the larger powers did nothing. Loomis flickered with distress. These are serious accusations. The council cannot function if members do not trust each other. Then maybe it's time for the council to change, Commander Grant said firmly. Maybe it's time to have rules with actual consequences. Maybe it's time to protect the weak instead of enabling the strong. Captain Hayes held up a hand for calm. We're not here to tear down the council. We're here to make it better. But that requires honesty. It requires accountability. And it requires everyone agreeing that some behaviors are unacceptable. He looked directly at Ambassador Krell. The Virex Dominion has been expanding aggressively for years. The council knows it. They've just been afraid to act. Well, humanity isn't afraid. Krell's scales flushed dark with anger. You threaten us? One species against the Dominion? We don't threaten, Hayes replied calmly. We state facts. Here's a fact for you, Ambassador. We've been monitoring your fleet movements for years. We know where every major installation is. We know your defense protocols. We know your communication codes. We could cripple your military infrastructure without firing a shot, but we haven't, because we'd prefer to solve this peacefully. Dr. Cole pushed his glasses up and added, though technically we already have fired shots today, but those were demonstrations, not attacks. There's a difference. Several delegates actually laughed nervously at that. A new delegate stood representing the Marin Commonwealth, a peaceful, aquatic species. Captain Hayes, you speak of changing the council. What specifically do you propose? Hayes straightened and his expression became more formal. First, the quarantine on humanity is dissolved immediately. Second, humanity receives full council membership with voting rights. Third, the council establishes a joint defense force to protect member species from aggression. Fourth, the Virex Dominion withdraws from the Terminus Belt and allows the Kalari to return to their homes. Impossible, Krell roared. The council has no authority to order our withdrawal. Then maybe, Commander Grant said quietly, humanity will escort the Kalari home ourselves. Without council approval, your choice, Ambassador. The threat hung in the air. Humanity had proven they could bypass any defense. If they decided to act unilaterally, no one could stop them. Elder Mira stood again, her voice stronger now. I speak for the Kalari people. We accept humanity's offer of friendship, and we ask the council to support Captain Hayes' proposals. Other small species began standing in support. The Torvin Collective, the Marin Commonwealth, even some larger species that were tired of Rex intimidation. Loomis saw the tide turning. This requires a formal vote, and extensive debate about the implications. Then debate, Hayes said. But understand this. The quarantine is over regardless of your vote. We're leaving our sector. We're exploring. We're trading. We're existing as free beings. You can work with us or you can try to stop us. I strongly recommend the first option. Ambassador Krell stood slowly. For a moment he looked like he might order an attack. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. The Virex Dominion will consult with our government. We need time to process what we've learned today. It wasn't surrender, but it wasn't defiance either. It was the first crack in Krell's armor of confidence. Captain Hayes nodded with respect. Take your time, Ambassador. We'll be here. And one more thing. The view screen split, showing multiple images simultaneously. Virex Space. Fleet Headquarters. The view screen flickered to life, and for the first time in 30 years, the Galactic Council saw a human face. Captain Daniel Hayes appeared on the main display, and he looked nothing like the monsters from the old stories. He was a man in his early 40s with short brown hair starting to gray at the temples. His uniform was dark blue with simple insignias on the shoulders. His expression was calm, almost friendly, but his eyes held a sharpness that made it clear he missed nothing. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiance was visible. A woman with blonde hair tied back in a tight bun stood at his right. Her uniform marked her as Commander Lisa Grant, First Officer. On his left stood a man with glasses and a slightly disheveled appearance, clearly more comfortable in a laboratory than on a warship. Dr. Peter Cole, according to the text that appeared below his image. The crew working at stations behind them moved with practiced efficiency. No panic, no confusion, just smooth professional operation of their vessel. Members of the Galactic Council, Hayes began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's speakers. Thank you for your attention. I know our arrival was unexpected. Unexpected? Ambassador Krell sputtered. You invaded Council space. You violated the most sacred law of the quarantine. Hayes nodded slowly. About that quarantine, we need to talk. Loomis drifted forward, his energy form pulsing with agitation. Captain Hayes, you must understand. The quarantine was established for the protection of all species, including your own. The incident 30 years ago was a lie, Hayes interrupted calmly. Or at least it was badly misrepresented. But we'll get to that. First, let me explain what humanity has been doing for the past 3 decades. Commander Grant stepped forward and touched a control panel. Holographic images appeared throughout the council chamber, visible to all delegates. They showed star charts, technical diagrams, and recordings that made several council members lean forward with interest. When you built the containment barrier around our space, Hayes continued, you assumed we would accept it, that we would stay quiet and isolated, maybe eventually dying out or becoming irrelevant. That's not what happened. The displays showed images of the monitoring stations that formed the quarantine barrier. Then they showed something else, detailed schematics of those same stations, labeled with weak points and system vulnerabilities. Dr. Cole adjusted his glasses and spoke for the first time, his voice carrying an academic tone. The barrier technology was impressive for its time. Quantum displacement fields combined with subspace monitoring grids. Very clever. It took us about 6 years to completely understand it. 6 years? A delegate whispered in disbelief. Another 4 to develop countermeasures, Cole continued as if teaching a class. And we've spent the last 20 years watching you. All of you. Every transmission. Every ship movement. Every technological development. We've been paying attention. The holographic displays shifted again, showing images that made the council chamber fall silent. Fleet positions, defense grid layouts, trade route maps, classified information that should have been impossible for anyone outside the council to know. Hayes let that sink in for a moment before continuing. We didn't resist the quarantine initially because we were still new to space travel. We needed time to understand the galaxy we were dealing with, so we watched. We learned, and we grew. You spied on us, Krell accused, his voice dripping with anger. We observed, Hayes corrected. There's a difference. We didn't interfere. We didn't sabotage. We just watched and took notes. And what we saw troubled us. Elder Mira's ears perked up at that. Commander Grant took over the presentation. We watched the Vrex Dominion expand into neutral space. We saw them push out smaller species and claim resources that didn't belong to them. We watched the council debate and argue but take no real action. New images appeared, showing Vrex fleets moving into the Terminus Belt. Kalari settlements being evacuated, families fleeing their homes. We saw the Kalari people lose their territory, Hayes said, his voice hardening slightly. Not through war, but through the Council's unwillingness to stand up to a bully. And we wondered what kind of civilization you were building out here. How dare you judge us? Krell roared. You are primitives. Warmongers! The very reason you were quarantined proves you have no right to speak of civilization. Hayes turned his full attention to the Vrex ambassador, and his calm expression didn't change at all. Ambassador Krell, would you like to tell the Council what really happened 30 years ago? Or should I? The records are clear, Krell said, but there was something nervous in his tone now. Human forces attacked a Vrex exploration fleet without provocation. They destroyed 3 ships before we could defend ourselves. That's interesting, Dr. Cole said, pushing his glasses up his nose. Because we have the original sensor logs from those Vrex ships, the ones your government thought were destroyed along with the vessels. The holographic displays changed again. This time they showed sensor recordings, data that couldn't be faked or altered. The timestamps were clear. The locations were precise, and what they showed made several delegates gasp. Vrex warships approaching a human colony world, the colony sending out peaceful hailing frequencies. The Vrex ships ignoring those hails and opening fire on civilian settlements. Explosions, panic, death. Only then did human defense ships arrive. Only then did the fighting truly begin. And yes, the human response was overwhelming. They destroyed the Vrex ships quickly and efficiently, but they hadn't attacked first. You fired on civilians, Hayes said quietly. Women, children, families who were just trying to build a new life on a frontier world. Your ships tested our defenses by murdering our people, and when we fought back, you told the Council we were the aggressors. The chamber was silent. Even Krell had no immediate response. Elder Mira stood up slowly, her small frame trembling. You were defending your people, like we tried to defend ours. Hayes nodded to her with respect. Yes, Elder, we were. And the Council believed the Vrex version of events because it was easier than asking difficult questions. It was easier to lock us away than to hold a powerful member accountable. Loomis flickered with what might have been shame. We were not aware of this evidence. The Vrex report was accepted in good faith. Was it? Commander Grant asked. Because we've been monitoring your diplomatic channels for years. Several council members questioned the Vrex story. Those questions were dismissed. The truth was inconvenient, so it was buried. The delegates began talking among themselves, some angry, some confused, all disturbed by what they were learning. Hayes held up a hand for silence. But that's in the past. We're here to talk about the future. Humanity has spent 30 years preparing for this moment. We've advanced our technology. We've unified our species. We've built a fleet, and now we're done being prisoners. You threaten us with your fleet? Another delegate called out. No, Hayes said firmly. We're offering you a choice. Humanity wants to join the galactic community. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to work together. We're not here to conquer or dominate. We're here to take our place as equals. And if we refuse? Krell asked, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Commander Grant smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Then we'll go anyway. The difference is whether we're friends or strangers. Whether we work together or simply ignore each other. The days of the quarantine are over, Ambassador. That's not a threat. It's a fact. Dr. Cole stepped forward again. To demonstrate our technological capabilities, we're willing to provide a practical exhibition. We understand you need proof that we can back up our words. We're prepared to show you exactly what humanity is capable of. A demonstration? Loomis asked carefully. A test, Hayes confirmed. Give us a target. Give us a scenario. We'll show you what we've built during our isolation. Then you can make an informed decision about whether you want us as allies. Ambassador Krell's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. The Vrex loved tests of strength. The Forge, he said quickly. The old weapons testing ground in dead space. We'll send 3 of our finest dreadnoughts as the opposing force. If you can defeat them, perhaps we'll consider your request. Hayes glanced at Commander Grant, who shrugged slightly. Dr. Cole actually chuckled. 3 dreadnoughts? Hayes asked. Ambassador, are you sure? We don't want to embarrass you. Krell's scales flushed darker with anger. My ships will crush you. Then we'll see how confident you are. Hayes turned back to the view screen and met the eyes of the council delegates. Very well. We'll meet your ships at the Forge in 6 hours. That should give you time to prepare and give the council time to set up observation posts. We'll demonstrate exactly what humanity can do. The transmission ended and the view screen went dark. The Defiance remained visible through the observation window, a dark shape against the stars. Silent. Waiting. Throughout the council chamber, delegates argued and debated. Some were outraged. Others were curious. Elder Mira sat quietly, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in years. And in the Vrex section, Ambassador Krell smiled with confidence and began making preparations to teach the humans a lesson they would never forget. 3 days passed in tense deliberation. The Galactic Council had never faced a situation quite like this before. Usually, new species petitioned humbly for membership, They negotiated for decades. They proved themselves through careful diplomacy and gradual technological advancement. Humanity had skipped all of that and simply announced they were joining. The audacity was stunning. The fact that they could back up their claims made it impossible to ignore. In the Vrex section of Axiom Prime, Ambassador Krell met with Commander Vex and other military leaders. The mood was dark. Sensor reports confirmed what Captain Hayes had said. Human ships were positioned around every major Vrex military installation, completely undetected until they chose to reveal themselves. "We could attack," suggested one general. "Rally the full fleet and strike before they're ready." Vex shook his head slowly. "Ready for what? They've been ready for weeks, maybe months. If they wanted to attack, we'd already be at war. They're showing restraint, which means they're weak," the general argued. "No," Krell said quietly, his confidence from earlier completely gone. "It means they're smart. They've proven they can defeat us. Now they're offering us a way to save face. We'd be fools not to take it." It was the hardest admission Krell had ever made. Meanwhile, in other sections of the station, different conversations were happening. Elder Mira met with representatives from a dozen smaller species who had suffered under Vrex expansion. They talked about hope, about finally having someone willing to stand up to the bullies. Scientists from across the galaxy were desperately trying to understand how human technology worked. Dr. Cole had provided enough information to be tantalizing but not enough to replicate. They would need human cooperation to learn more. On the fourth day, the council reconvened. The chamber was packed. Every delegate was present. Every species wanted to witness this historic moment. The defiance hung visible through the observation window, a silent reminder of what was at stake. Loomis called the session to order, his energy form glowing brightly. "We have deliberated extensively. The matter before us is unprecedented. Captain Hayes, we invite you to join us for the final discussion." The view screen activated. Hayes appeared, once again flanked by Commander Grant and Dr. Cole. Behind them, the bridge crew worked calmly. "Thank you, Moderator," Hayes said. "Before we proceed to votes," Loomis continued, "Ambassador Krell has requested to speak." The Vrex ambassador stood slowly. He looked older somehow, less confident. His scales had lost some of their luster. "Captain Hayes," Krell began, and his voice was careful and controlled. "The Vrex Dominion has consulted with our High Command. We have reviewed the evidence you presented regarding the first contact incident. The recordings were examined by our own scientists. They confirm your version of events." A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. "The attack on your colony world was unauthorized," Krell continued, and each word seemed painful. "The commander who ordered it was acting beyond his authority. Our government did not know the full truth. We were lied to, just as we inadvertently lied to the council. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close. Coming from a Vrex, it was remarkable. However," Krell continued, "your response was still excessive. 3 of our ships destroyed. Over 400 Vrex warriors killed." Hayes's expression didn't change. "You killed 347 of our civilians, Ambassador. We responded to protect what remained. Every Vrex warrior we killed was armed and attacking. Every human you killed was unarmed and helpless." "There's a difference," Krell's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. "Perhaps. The Vrex Dominion is prepared to make the following offer. We will withdraw from the Terminus Belt. We will allow the Kalari to return to their territory. We will submit to a council investigation of our expansion activities." Elder Mira's eyes widened with hope. "In exchange," Krell continued, "the council will acknowledge that both our species made mistakes 30 years ago. The quarantine was placed on humanity based on incomplete information. That was wrong. But humanity's violent response, while perhaps justified in their view, made the galaxy fearful. Both sides had reason to be wary. It was diplomatic face-saving, but it was also progress." Captain Hayes considered for a moment, then nodded. "The United Nations Space Command can accept those terms. We never claimed to be perfect, Ambassador. We only claim to be unfairly judged. If you're willing to acknowledge that, we can move forward." Loomis pulsed with what might have been relief. "Then let us proceed to the formal votes. First, the dissolution of the human quarantine." The vote was overwhelming. Only 3 species voted against, and 2 of them were Vrex allies who felt obligated. The quarantine that had stood for 30 years was gone in minutes. Second, Loomis continued. Full council membership for humanity with voting rights and all associated privileges. This vote was closer. Some species were still nervous about human military power, but the smaller species, the ones who had been bullied and ignored, voted strongly in favor. Elder Mira's voice was particularly passionate. The motion passed. Third, Loomis said, the establishment of a joint defense force to protect member species from aggression. This required more debate. The details would take months to work out. But the principle was accepted. The council would no longer just talk about problems. It would act. Captain Hayes watched the votes with satisfaction. Then he spoke again. Members of the council, I have one more thing to share. A new ship appeared on the sensors. This one was different from the warships. It was larger, bulkier, and clearly not military in design. This is the UNSV Horizon, Hayes explained as the vessel approached Axiom Prime. It's a colony ship, but we're not using it for colonies today. It's carrying 500 human diplomats, scientists, engineers, teachers, and medical personnel. They're ready to begin work immediately, sharing our knowledge and learning from yours. The image of the horizon appeared on the view screen. Through its windows, people were visible. Human faces looking out at the station with expressions of excitement and wonder. We're not here to conquer, Commander Grant added. We're here to help, to trade, to learn, to grow alongside you. But we're also here to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Dr. Cole stepped forward with his characteristic academic enthusiasm. I've already received over 300 requests for information sharing from various species. We'll start with medical technology and power generation. Those will have the most immediate positive impact. Then we can move to more complex fields. Elder Mira stood, tears visible in her large eyes. On behalf of the Kalari people, I thank humanity for their support. We look forward to returning home and beginning a new friendship with you. Other delegates began standing. One by one, species that had been afraid to speak up before found their voices. They welcomed humanity. They offered trade agreements. They proposed cultural exchanges. Not everyone was happy. Some species remained suspicious. A few were openly hostile. But the tide had turned. Humanity was part of the galactic community now, whether everyone liked it or not. Captain Hayes smiled, and for the first time it was genuine and warm rather than diplomatic. We look forward to working with all of you. We have much to learn from the galaxy, and perhaps we have some things to teach as well. The Defiance began docking procedures at Axiom Prime. Around the galaxy, other human ships remained at their stations, not as threats now but as reassurances. They were protectors, not conquerors. In the following weeks, human personnel spread throughout Council space. They worked in hospitals, improving medical care. They consulted on engineering projects, solving problems that had stalled for years. They taught classes on quantum theory and shared recipes for food and stories about Earth. The Kalari returned to the Terminus Belt with human ships escorting them. When a few Vrek ships tried to interfere, they found their systems mysteriously failing until they turned back. The message was clear. Humanity's protection was real. Ambassador Krell remained on the council, diminished but not destroyed. The Vrek's dominion was forced to follow rules for the first time in decades. Some Vreks resented it. Others quietly appreciated having someone to keep their more aggressive members in check. 6 months after the Defiance first decloaked at Axiom Prime, Captain Daniel Hayes stood before the full council assembly to deliver his first formal address as humanity's ambassador. 6 months ago, he began, an unknown human ship decloaked in your space and the galaxy held its breath. Today I stand before you not as a threat but as a friend, not as a conqueror but as a partner. He gestured to the observation window where dozens of ships from different species moved peacefully, trading and communicating. Among them, human vessels worked alongside everyone else. We've learned much from you, Hayes continued. Your music and art, your philosophy and history. You've shown us that the galaxy is far more diverse and wonderful than we imagined, and in return we've tried to share what we can. He paused, making eye contact with delegates around the chamber, but we've also made it clear what we will not tolerate. Aggression against the innocent. The strong bullying the weak. The council ignoring injustice because it's inconvenient. Those days are over. Commander Grant and Dr. Cole stood behind him, representing the different aspects of humanity. The lights of Axiom Prime gleamed against the darkness of space like a jewel floating in an endless ocean. The massive station rotated slowly. its ring spinning to create artificial gravity for the thousands of beings living and working inside. Today was special. Today, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for the annual summit of the Galactic Council. Inside the Grand Council chamber, dozens of species sat in their designated sections. The room was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. Some needed water tanks, others required extreme cold or heat. The council had thought of everything over the centuries of cooperation. Ambassador Krell stood at the central podium, his reptilian form towering over most other delegates. His scales were deep green and his yellow eyes gleamed with confidence. The Vrex Dominion had been expanding their territory for years, and Krell loved reminding everyone of their power. The Terminus Belt now belongs to the Vrex, Krell announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. We claimed it legally under the doctrine of abandoned space. A small furry delegate named Elder Mira from the Kalari people rose from her seat. Her voice was gentle but firm. That space was not abandoned. My people lived there for generations. You forced us out. Krell waved a clawed hand dismissively. Your people left. We simply moved in. Perhaps you should have defended it better. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable, but no one directly challenged the Vrex ambassador. The Vrex military was too strong. Their fleet was the largest in known space. Starting a conflict with them would be costly. Elder Mira sat down slowly, her ears drooping with defeat. Several other delegates whispered sympathetically but offered no real support. The council moderator, a floating being of pure energy named Loomis, tried to restore order. Let us move to the next item on our agenda. The trade negotiations between... Before we continue, interrupted Ambassador Krell with a sharp-toothed smile, I wish to remind this council of a success story. 30 years ago, we faced a potential threat, a violent, unpredictable species that attacked without reason. Together, we contained them. The humans remain in their designated sector, and the galaxy is safer for it. A few delegates nodded in agreement. The human quarantine was considered one of the council's great achievements. After a brief but bloody first contact incident, humanity had been confined to their small corner of space. A barrier of monitoring stations surrounded their territory, keeping them isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The barrier stands strong, Krell continued. Not a single human ship has attempted to cross it. Perhaps they finally learned their place. More murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The younger species had never even seen a human. They only knew the stories, tales of irrational aggression and dangerous technology. Elder Mira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I heard the humans helped during the first contact. I heard they were defending their colony when... You heard wrong, Krell snapped. The official records are clear. Humans are too violent to join civilized society. The quarantine protects us all. Loomis glowed brighter, trying to redirect the conversation. Yes. The quarantine has been effective. Now, shall we return to the trade negotiations? That's when every sensor in the chamber started screaming. Alarms blared. Holographic displays flickered to life around the room, showing energy readings that made no sense. Something massive was appearing in the viewing space just outside the chamber's main observation window. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear. Reality bent in ways that violated every known law of physics. Then slowly, impossibly, a shape began to materialize. It started as a shadow, a dark outline against the stars. Then details emerged. A hull of dark gray metal, smooth and angular. Weapon ports along the sides. Engine clusters that glowed with contained power. And size. The vessel was enormous, easily twice the length of the largest Vrex dreadnought. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates jumped from their seats. Some screamed. Others activated personal shields or called for their security teams. The station's defense grid powered up automatically, but the targeting systems couldn't lock onto the vessel. It was as if the ship existed slightly out of phase with normal space. Ambassador Krell's eyes widened. His confident posture crumbled. Impossible, he hissed. The sensor showed nothing. Nothing. The ship finished materializing and hung in space like a predator watching its prey. Along its hull, markings became visible. Strange symbols that most delegates didn't recognize, and a designation in a language that made several translators spark and restart. UNS Defiance. It's a human ship, someone whispered. The whisper spread like wildfire through the chamber. A human ship. Here. At Axiom Prime. In the heart of Council space, thousands of light years from their quarantine zone. Loomis tried to restore calm, but his energy form flickered with obvious distress. How did they get through the barrier? Why didn't the monitoring stations alert us? No one had an answer. Then, cutting through every communication frequency in the station, a transmission arrived. It was audio only, but the voice was clear and steady, speaking in perfect galactic common. Axiom Prime Control, this is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Nations Space Command vessel Defiance. We come in peace and request permission to address the Galactic Council on a matter of great importance. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the massive ship floating just outside their window. For 30 years, humanity had been silent, contained, forgotten by most. Now they were here and no one knew how. Ambassador Krell found his voice first. This is an act of war. You have violated the quarantine. The monitoring stations should have destroyed you before you got anywhere near Council space. The human voice responded, and there was something in its tone that made scales and fur and energy forms alike go still. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was absolute, unshakable calm. Ambassador Krell, the monitoring stations are fine. We didn't destroy them. We simply went around them. Well, technically we went through them, but the details are complicated. Impossible, Krell roared. Our sensors would have detected you. Would they? Captain Hayes asked simply. We've been watching you for 30 years, Ambassador. We've studied your technology. We know every ship class in your fleet, every weapon system, every defense protocol. Did you really think we were just sitting quietly in our corner, waiting for permission to exist? The implications of those words settled over the Council like a cold blanket. If humans could bypass the monitoring stations without detection, if they could appear in the heart of Council space without warning, what else could they do? Elder Mira leaned forward in her seat, her eyes wide with hope and fear mixed together. Loomis finally regained control of his voice. Captain Hayes, your presence here is highly irregular. The Council must discuss. The Council will hear what we have to say, Hayes interrupted politely but firmly. We're not asking for permission anymore, Moderator Loomis. We're informing you of our decision. Humanity rejects the quarantine. We claim our right to join the galactic community as equals. You can accept that peacefully, or we can make things difficult. The choice is yours. The massive ship remained perfectly still in space, its weapons powered down, its presence alone making the statement. Ambassador Krell's claws scraped against his podium. You dare threaten the Council? You are one ship. We have thousands. There was a pause. Then Captain Hayes spoke again, and this time there was something almost like amusement in his voice. One ship? Ambassador, who said anything about one ship? Every sensor in the chamber screamed again. All across the display screens, new contacts appeared. Ships decloaking near every major station, near fleet headquarters, near planetary defense grids, near government centers. 30 identical vessels, each one as large as the Defiance, each one appearing exactly where they wanted to be. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity waited for an answer.